Welcome to Fire Your Boss Fridays. It is another beautiful Friday in Las Vegas. We have an amazing guest with us. And yes, we told you we might not have any guests coming for a little while. You're just going to see a lot of Lisa and I. But Alan found us. We looked through his bio and his reviews, and I think
we had to make an exception.
Yeah, I think this guy's a rising star, and we're like, okay, let's get him on here. So Alan Lazaros, and he talks about leveling up. In fact, he's got a level up university
next level.
Okay. All right. So what we mostly talk about on this podcast, or try to focus on and keep things geared toward, is aspiring entrepreneurs. So we want to be careful we don't get over these guys' heads. All of our listeners here generally aspiring, so we're going to help them with their transition from wherever they are now through that 9 to 5. And what we call that is steal your life back, fire your boss, and live a life full of purpose. And so a lot of our questions are going to be derived around those kind of three main themes. And I think it's all part of the journey. And I think from what I found in some of your writings, you've kind of laid it all out in detail. So I'm going to shoot this off. Alan, introduce yourself. And obviously, you'll probably be better at describing a little bit about what you do specifically, because you have a lot on your plate. Okay. I've seen podcast, I've seen education, coaching. So walk us through that. Let our listeners know a little bit more about you.
Okay, so first and foremost, I'll share. I appreciate the question. I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you. I appreciate the production value here. You guys got it going on. This is awesome. So who is Alan? Definitely not a question that can be answered super quickly, but I'll try to give you the quicker version so that we can get into the nuts and bolts of things. So the shortest version of my story is when I was born, I was 2 years old, and my father passed away in a car accident when I was 2. I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14. My stepfather left my family at 14. That was kind of after the dot-com bubble and the 90s sort of thing, early 2000s. And I had an older sister and a mom who kind of raised me. And we went from like pretty well off upper middle class in America to I get free lunch at school now because our income is so low and I don't even know how I'm going to go to college.
Oh, wow.
And at that time, my dream was to go to Worcester Polytechnic Institute, which is kind of like a mini MIT, super expensive tech school. And I didn't know how I was going to go. So I had to work my butt off in high school to get straight A's and to try to get as much financial aid and scholarships as I could possibly get. And so I did. I got into my dream school and I got financial aid and scholarships, that kind of thing, sort of bootstrapped my way and through tons of adversity. And then I went into corporate America. I got my computer engineering degree, and then I stayed for my MBA, and I went into corporate America, and I worked at a bunch of different tech companies. And I eventually did also fire my boss. But prior to that, I got in my own car accident. And so my father passed away in a car accident when he was 28 years old, when I was 2. And when I was 26, I was on the road. I was an inside sales engineer and then an outside sales engineer selling industrial automation equipment to big companies like GE, some small companies too, manufacturing. Doing really, really, really well financially, but not very well internally. So I end up in my own car accident, and I was on the wrong side of the road, saw the brightest lights I'd ever seen, thought it was a Mack truck. Fortunately, it was not a Mack truck. It was a lift-kitted pickup truck. And I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat that I used to call the tank. Steel trap of a car. German engineered car. And I think that car saved my life, genuinely. Both airbags did deploy. Me and my little cousin, he was 17 at the time, were okay physically. He hurt his knee on the airbag. I hurt my face on the airbag. But essentially, physically, we were okay. Emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, I was rattled to the absolute core.
Amen.
Because my father passed away in a car accident, this was
all
not
that trauma just like resurfaced, I'm sure. Yeah, in that space. Yeah.
Completely. And so, when people say like I had that life or death situation, it's inexplicable to people who haven't had it. But for me, it was much more than that because my little cousin was 17. He was tweeting about it that night, didn't think anything of it, sort of teen invincibility type of thing. Me, I was just existential crisis, quarter life crisis, 26 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I? What's the purpose? Was I proud of the man I became? Did I?
If it would have ended right there, what would be the story
Yeah,
about
what's your
you,
legacy
right?
at that point? Mm-hmm.
100%. And legacy, that you mentioned, that actually, that's my number one core value. And a lot of people say your purpose comes from your deepest pain. For me, I grew up hearing about John. My dad's name was John, and I grew up hearing stories about John, especially after my stepfather left. Then we talked about my dad a lot more. And so for me, having my dad die in a car accident and then me almost dying in a car accident, and this car was absolutely totaled too. It's not like a fender bender. I saw pictures of my dad's car. I've seen pictures of mine. They don't look very different. Fortunately, we're okay. But at the end of the day, that's the quickest way I can give it. I used to live from the outside in, and I didn't know it. I was very successful from the outside in, very smart from the outside in, very, very credentialed from the outside in. But from the inside out, I was deeply unfulfilled and had a lot of stuff I hadn't dealt with. And after 26, I decided I don't want to be successful from the outside in. I want to be successful from the inside out.
The transformation begins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Alan, I want to ask you a personal question there. You're really diving into the deep stuff, but for the right reasons, right? To show, the reason for transformation. But had this not happened, do you think people can make this conscious choice outside of that? Is it easier, harder? That seems like a solid cold turkey on old life, what I call I always say, if you want a dream life, don't remodel your old one, right? You're not going to get a dream house out of remodeling this old one. You got to start from scratch. You want a dream home, right? So the question for our listeners, do you feel like from your perspective, maybe anyone can make that transformation without that? Or do you have any tips on that?
Yeah. So I think it's a duality.
Don't just wait around for a car accident, guys, is what I'm saying.
Right. It's a duality. I think on one hand, I don't think that drastic of a transformation in that amount of time is really possible without some sort of trauma. There's a lot of studies on this. There's post-traumatic stress disorder, and then there's also post-traumatic growth, and they run in tandem. And so for me, I'll just share this. After my car accident, there was a lot of negatives too. So yeah, I flipped the script. I got into personal growth, and I became obsessed with getting better from the inside out. And I, really started to live within my passion, my purpose for a profit. And now,
was that immediate?
Later, no, not at all. Yeah, not at
all. Like,
all.
how long did that process take you?
Well, 9 years.
Okay.
In a way,
okay.
9 years.
Uh-huh.
Well, sure, and it's ongoing, I'm sure,
right.
too. Yeah,
always. But to answer your question too, is it was in parallel with overcoming the trauma. So I was claustrophobic. I kept getting pulled over because double yellow lines scared me because I was too far on the right side of the road, and the cops were very kind to me because they were like, "Dude, you're hugging the road," and I'm just, because I ended up on the wrong side of the road during my car accident. Ceiling fans, claustrophobic, tight spaces, and so I had to literally puff my chest up and walk in and out of doorways for a time just to do exposure therapy on myself. But over time, I just started to build these positive habits and these choices. And then, once I overcame, I was afraid of crowds for a little while. I was afraid of, claustrophobia for a little while. Double yellow lines scared me. Getting the back in the car was hard. But after I took that exposure therapy, that fear chasing, that facing these things head on, and eventually I just started to get better and better and better and better. And, even getting on camera, I remember my first YouTube video was just so scary. Even though at the time I didn't think I was scared, in hindsight, it's obvious I was scared and just compensating with ego. And now, I just kind of iteratively improve by a little bit each day, and both inner work and outer work. I always say, if you want a coach, you probably need a therapist. And if you want a therapist, you probably need a coach. That's kind of my thing. I needed a therapist.
Interesting.
I had tons of coaches and mentors and success, and but what I needed was a therapist, and I think a lot of people are the opposite, actually.
Yeah.
So this is getting really heavy right away, brother, but I think that's kind of what you're bringing to the table, and I like that. This is what we're describing right now, guys, how you stole your life back, right? Because whatever life you were living before, Alan, was had kind of consumed the version of you that you actually wanted to be, the potential version of you that was waiting inside there, right? So this opportunity was to like strip away all those things, right? And that's this immersion therapy. That's you stripping off something that is literally holding you down. And as you're breaking all these away, you're moving quicker and quicker and quicker towards, this, perceived fulfillment. And I read one of your articles that you had listed on LinkedIn, I think one of your blogs or something of that nature, about John Lennon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you go into it starts off with something about John Lennon, but it goes into joy, pleasure, and fulfillment, which this aligns with the long-term play. So your legacy. So fulfillment is going to be the allurement, right? The same allurement that makes you eat, like in your article, a donut or whatever the thing is that you do. That the reason it lures you in is because it draws you in to help you go through these dark places so that you can learn something. Because if someone said it's going to be this hard to do this thing, you'd go, yeah, I don't even want to try it. You would just say no. So these things that you put in front of you, like fulfillment, are going to lure you into these hard places so that you'll actually do it, because it's way harder than you think it's going to be always. And so, but then you get in there, and tell me if I'm wrong, Alan, you get in, you go, well, I didn't come this far, it only come this far.
Oh yeah,
because you get in so deep, right? So in this, so in this article, you go into that fulfillment. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? You talk about it very specifically, as it might even be in some of your coaching, I would imagine.
Oh, it's so interesting. I'm so grateful you asked. Fulfillment to me is something that was never talked about a ton, but it always fascinated me. And the John Lennon quote that you're referring to in my blog, I'm grateful that you read it. It's John Lennon's teacher asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And John Lennon said, happy. And the teacher said, you don't understand the assignment. And John Lennon said, you don't understand life. And I don't really know if that's true. I genuinely don't. I'm assuming it is. It's very popular. But it could be false. I don't know. But what I do know is that happiness is this weird thing that we're all told we're supposed to go for, that we never really fully defined, and no one really knows how to create it or sustain it. And there's no real formula that's out there that really, I think, does a good job. And so to me, it all stems from a quick story that when I was in my early 20s, at this point I had looked around, and quite frankly, calling a spade, I grew up in an area and an environment where I saw a lot of miserable people. A lot of people didn't seem very fulfilled to me. I have a computer engineering brain, so my brain was like, I can't, people would say, Alan, these are the best years of your life in high school. And I'd say, God, I hope not. I mean, high school sucked, right? I mean, God, I hope not. That can't be it, right? But then you look at their life, and they don't like their marriage. They're not fulfilled. They don't like their career. Half of them didn't want kids but have children, right? And again, calling a spade, not trying to be unkind, my brain went, there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way. So my mom asked me one time, like, why does intelligence matter so much to you? And I said, because it's the most important thing. What's the difference between a smartphone and a dumb phone? The smartphone can do more. What's the difference between a human and a dog, right? The human can project into the future and contemplate and think about what they want. And so anyways, I basically said this. I said, I'm trying to figure out the formula. I said this to my mom. Now, keep in mind, this is me in my early 20s ego version. I'm trying to figure out the formula to not end up old and miserable like everybody else. And now I understand why that was so offensive. But I meant it. I was very naive and genuine. Like I'm going to figure out the formula.
Yeah. When you say that, I see this all the time too, my brother. And, when I was one of those people, I almost had to ask myself, like, what are you doing here? This isn't what you really want to do. You get forced into these situations. And to our audience, you probably feel this way too. Like you're making decisions, you feel like your life is a series of decisions you're forced into. Right? That you're not in control of every single move that you make. Let me give you an example. I talk to people all the time, and I'm like, well, don't you think you should prepare a little bit more for this type of event in your life, or blah, blah, whatever the thing is? And Sometimes it's, the financial crisis. It's the reality is here. The numbers make sense. You're going to have to be prepared for this inflation. And then they're like, oh, well, sure. Then what happens at that point, you can make a conscious decision. You can actually deliberate. But what if you wait too long? What happens? You get put into a corner and you only get one option, because you get so close to the edge that you don't have time to discuss anything. You don't have time to orchestrate anything. You don't have time to do anything else. You get forced into a decision. And then what? You're just forced into a decision. You didn't even get to plan your life. Now you're doing something you didn't want to do. You took a loan you didn't want to take. All these things that essentially you signed up for, because you're not taking, you're really not taking control of your life. And it's not your fault technically. The system's got you spinning in what they call survival mode. And actually, and what that does for you guys, and research it if you want. Survival mode, if you are living paycheck to paycheck, your brain actually changes physically. A part of your brain will not let you think forward into the future, make long-term conscious decisions. It's a real thing. And then you get stuck in that loop, and there's only one way to escape it. First, know it exists and understand it's a real thing. And the second is start taking small steps or action. So with that said, Alan, what small steps did you start taking? You said it was a 9-year process at this point. What were some of the first things you did to just start moving in that direction?
The one that comes up when people ask me similar questions to that, but I'm really grateful that you mentioned the survival mode thing, because if you are in survival mode, you only can care about today. You can't care about 10 years from now.
You can't. And I've researched it in depth. Yep. Yeah,
100%.
Metaphysically, you can't actually do it. You just stuck.
And if that's
I think other people know this.
Yep.
They
say again. Oh yeah.
Like they know this, right? And so you need to be the one who knows this, right? And what people don't know is this. What you're probably about ready to explain. Yeah.
The car accident actually, my Phoenix burnt down. My Phoenix was the ego of the identity that I used to have. And so you had asked me originally, could that happen without a car accident? Yes and no. Yes, in an iterative sense of studying yourself, understanding human nature, understanding your human nature, understanding psychology, understanding neuroscience, and how you can change your brain through your actions and your thoughts and your belief systems. So yes and no. Like, no, you're not going to have the transformation that I had without any trauma. But yes, right. If you want, you can make new choices. And when you ask me what's one of the choices that I made that turned it around for me, it's habit tracking. I have these little black notebooks behind me, and there's like a bunch of them. And now we have an app, and I'm not here to talk about my app. But the point is I've habit tracked every day for 9 years.
Like, meaning so you literally write down all of your habits?
So I used to in these little notebooks have all these habits. I called it my daily system of success back then. Now my whole team does it. I have a 21-person team. We all track habits. Now we do it in Google Sheets. And then we actually have
conscious thinking, by the way, Alan. So thank you for validating it. This is you as a human being saying, hey, I'm taking control of my life. I'm going to live a life by design. I'm stealing it back from all the things that come into my life daily and try to take a part of me. And I'm stealing it back, and I'm going to do something where I consciously know this is what's best for me. And most people know. Most people know, don't do this, do this. They already know all those things. They're not doing it habitually. And so this is a great thing. So these habit journals, just drop some value bombs on our listeners on this value journal. Is it something like they could just buy one online? Yeah, show us what you got here.
Yeah. So again, this one's mine. I'm not here to sell my thing, but this is what I do. It's called a Dreamliner. Oop, I don't know if you can see that. But
cool.
Every single day I wake up in the morning and I have top 3 gratitudes. I have my top 3 most important tasks. I have my most important win from yesterday, most important improvement from yesterday. And then I have what's called a next level nugget. And that's what's the biggest lesson from yesterday. And then I have, did you check?
I got to have one of those, Alan. I got to check that out, dude.
I would love to. It's on Amazon. So if you type in
Is it?
next
Okay.
level
I'll buy
Dreamliner
one. Don't
on
you worry
Amazon,
about it. Watch my order come through here.
perfect. There'll be some planes that come up that are not ours. Dreamliner. Whenever you type in Dreamliner, apparently it's a cruise and planes.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, so achieve your dreams 90 days at a time. It's this kind of thing I do. But to bring it back to habit tracking, I have several examples I can give you. Exercise for 30 minutes a day. I don't care if it's walking. I don't care if it's soccer or basketball or weight training. I've exercised every day, and sometimes I don't even like talking about this because it's something that may be triggering to other people. So my girlfriend and I, 694 days ago, March 1st of 2022. So I could ask Siri how many days that's been. Hey Siri, how many days has it been since March 1st of 2022? Okay, so 689 days ago, Emilia and I decided to start a fitness challenge. And I said, I want to beat my old best. And my old best at that point was 3.5 months in a row without missing. And we did. We beat my old best. And then eventually we got to a year. And I'll never forget, we're pulling into our garage, Emilia and I, my girlfriend and I. And I was like, well, now what? We did a year of consistent exercise, half hour a day without a single miss every single day, which by the way is nothing short of absolutely brutal. It's very difficult to do. It sounds easy.
You know what, Alan? This is a moment where I'll step in and just say it's funny because I've had people tell me, like, because I've always been pretty much in decent shape my whole life, right? And you could eat anything and get away with it, and I'm like, you don't have any idea what I do to keep this girlish figure. You know what I mean? You know what I'm so, and it's true though. It's not easy. Like, Lisa, how many classes did you do at True Fusion? Like 400 some classes, hour-long classes?
I'm closer to like 800 or something now.
800 classes, nice. Hour-long classes at this facility. And same thing, Alan, right? Where don't come at me with I don't do nothing for this.
Yeah,
like
it's devaluing it,
right?
It's devaluing it. Yeah.
Yeah. But what for you though? There's a different perspective here. I want to hear it. Sorry.
Okay. So the only perspective, I've been tracking that habit for 689 days, and I have an accountability partner, my intimate partner, and so we get into the garage, and I say, well, now what? Because we did a year, and she's like, well, let's just do this for the rest of our life. And I had like a mini panic attack. Genuinely, it was like, it wasn't bad, but it was a little bit like, because I know what that means. I have a very strategic math brain, and I know what that means. You can't just
why
on a
do
whim
you work out though? Yeah,
huh?
Your why, right? Like, why are you working out now? Because
to be the best version of myself, I guess. I mean, at the end of the day, I want to get a little bit better.
Why did it make your list though in the first place, Alan? There's more to working out than just winning this contest with you and yourself.
Physical,
right?
mental,
and
emotional,
having a habit, and like, oh, I won the habit contest. That's not what we're trying to win here.
Of course.
What did? No, I know. I'm just playing around, but for the sake of the argument, working out is how important to you as an entrepreneur, you feel, or why do you feel like this is number one on the list?
So before my car accident, I wasn't lifting. I wasn't working out. I wasn't exercising consistently. I was drinking too much and too often. I was successful from the outside in. I was focused on money and friends and BS. And I just was so deeply unfulfilled. And to me, fulfillment comes from keeping the small promises you make to yourself and taking a virtuous path towards your calling. And at the end of the day, what do I mean by calling rather than some heavy esoteric thing? It's are you trying to get better and doing all you can with all you have? So every day and every dollar needs to count, and it needs to count towards something. And to me, I was so out of shape and so miserable. After my car accident, I just decided I'm gonna get in shape. I'm gonna get strong. And I was a fitness model for a time. I've done 41 photo shoots. I had the ripped 8-pack abs. I've done fitness shows. I won one of them, which was great. But at the end of the day, why am I working out? Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual development. And honestly, you cannot.
It matches up to all of them. I just wanted to hear you say it, Alan.
Yeah.
Preach it.
You cannot be the best version of yourself and not exercise. You just scientifically can't. And so to me, I think the consistency piece is what I want to do. I will exercise my goal is to exercise every day for the rest of my life. And as crazy as that sounds, sometimes it's just walking my dog for a half hour.
Mm-hmm.
I was on the treadmill the other night by myself in my basement for a half hour, listening to a Kobe Bryant interview. And that's okay. So it doesn't have to be some crazy workout, but at the end of the day, that's one of the habits that I track and one of the habits that I stack.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, your self-esteem will go bigger and bigger and bigger, because every day in the past when I used to not work out, when my brain was telling me to do it, when my highest self was telling me to do it, those whispers, you can only ignore them for so long.
Well, you're only letting yourself down. And I think in Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules of Life, he goes into this, and why I know this is going to sound funny, but unless you've read the book, he talks about the lobsters that end up being the more dominant lobsters actually grow to be bigger for no apparent reason other than they just feel better about themselves. According to science, like that, they can't figure out. I think that's how it went. It's been some years since I read the book, but there creates a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And the hierarchy is, how they attract their mates and all this type of stuff, right? And it just comes from constantly winning each battle, one after another. And the more battles you lose, the lower in the hierarchy you fall. But there's no reason for it. It just is this unknown hierarchy within these creatures, and that's why the book's so fascinating. So you're really meant so I'm turning this into a mind thing, okay, guys? And this might be too heavy, like he said before. We don't want to get too heavy in the esoteric realm, but as far as the mind's concerned, it's the only thing that knows you just failed and let yourself down by not doing the thing that you felt like you could do. But when you do fulfill within yourself, then the mind then thinks it's more superior and it's moving forward. So in one sense, it's all an illusion. But if it is, let's hack it. Quit, sabotaging yourself. It's self-sabotage to let yourself down. And don't set up habits, that you're not gonna do, right? Have that conversation with yourself. Maybe working out for an hour isn't you. Just tell yourself 15 minutes, right? Just do something attainable so that you can achieve the thing that we're talking about or trying to explain here, which is that it's growing confidence in yourself. You're trying to build a habit of putting positive growth under yourself. So if you win 15 minutes for a year, and you didn't have that last year, you won. You won the whole thing. So then, make it to 30 minutes. But it's about the discipline, because then you can just stick a habit in there. Once you can do 1, 2, maybe 3 habits for a year long, pretty much you're unstoppable. You can transform your life at any given point in time. Would you agree, Alan, on that?
It grows like crazy. When my business partner's name's Kevin, you can look him up, Kevin Palmieri. Awesome dude. Came from very little.
He's bigger than you. His arms, I think his biceps are bigger than you.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
He is jacked.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's okay. It's true.
In his book, in his journal, he says, I got to have bigger arms than Alan. That's my habit.
Literally. He jokes about stuff like that too. He is jacked, definitely. But he came from very little, very humble beginnings. And when I first started habit tracking, suggesting it to him, because I had done it for years prior to him, and we started our podcast together 7 years ago, and our whole business now, 21-person team, awesome. But at the end of the day, it all started with him coming to me saying, dude, we got to make some money. More, actually, he saying, I need to make some money. I said, he's like, well, how do I do it? I said, start tracking habits. And that was not the answer he was looking for.
No, right? Isn't that funny?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So
it never is.
Never is. So we started with 5. We started with 5 habits. One of them was track your finances, track your spending, right? And now, I mean, you should see this dude's, we call it PPT, peak performance tracking. You should see his PPT. He's got at least 24 habits now, and he cranks. I mean, he's a workhorse. But back then, 5 was too much. So it grows. The first time you play basketball, you suck. You always will. At first. But if you practice, it just eventually you just look back and go, holy crap. I mean, we just surpassed our 1600th episode, and I stumbled upon in my phone our first episode, and I went all the way back. Never do that. So I went all the way back, and the very first episode where I had my own podcast, I interviewed Kevin, and then he had me on his show before we teamed up. So we each had our own podcast, and we teamed up.
Wow. Cool little story. Yeah.
And so he was my first guest. I was his first guest. Really cool. And then we teamed up. But those were brutal interviews. I mean, they're just not good. And it's nothing against us. It's not like we were any worse than anyone else who was brand new. You know, if this interview is good, if I'm a excellent speaker, it's not because I was born this way. It's because I just have done this thousands of times, and I've learned from each iteration, and I've taken more L's in speeches and more L's on podcasts than I can count. But I just keep getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. And the same with habit tracking. So whether it's 15 minutes, then 20, then 25, then 30, or it's whatever it is, writing. So right now I'm writing 20 minutes a day, and that is really hard to sustain. In 2023, so you read my blog, I appreciate it. In 2023, I wanted to write every day. I failed miserably. I only wrote maybe 5 times out of every 2 weeks. So 5 out of 14.
Mm-hmm.
And this year I was like, listen, this is hurting my self-esteem. You know, I'm breaking promises to myself every day.
Well, and you know it's going to make things like, you know, the result of you writing creates something even bigger than just the writing anyway.
That's why
right? That's your why.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
I'm called to write. It's not even like I want to be honest. Writing's really hard for me, so I'm grateful that you enjoyed the blog, but that was like, I'm not a natural writer. I'm a computer engineer. This is like brutal for me. Writing is really hard for me. So I just failed all last year, and I told myself this year, listen, let's lower the target. Lower the daily target. Don't lower the long-term target. I still want to be a prolific writer. But let's lower the daily target. And so far, I'm 19 days in a row of 20 minutes. And I actually wrote first thing.
Does this go
morning.
back to that, Jim, that I said about working
Same
out?
thing.
Just make it 15 minutes. Don't lie to yourself.
I was
right?
lying
so
to myself.
You're
last
doing
year.
the same thing, basically. Yeah.
I was lying to myself last year. And then after this year, if I can do it, then bump it. Maybe try 25. Try. As a matter of fact, Emilia in 2024, she said, I can't stay the same. I'm like, I appreciate you. I understand. Most growth-oriented human of all time. My girlfriend Emilia, unreal. She's like, we got to bump to 35. So now we walk on the treadmill for 5 minutes before our weight training. And a lot of our workouts are 35 instead of 30. The minimum is still 30. So that's the benchmark, but we usually bump it to 35. And that's what you do. You get incrementally better, and it's not sexy and it's not shiny, but at the end of the day, that is what it takes. And rather than trying to posture and put on a show that you're happy, like I used to do when I was miserable, when I was the most unfulfilled, I was actually pretending to be the most happy. It's this weird irony. And now I'm by far more fulfilled, but I'm not really pretending anymore. So to me, it's who are you when you're by yourself? What are you doing when you're by yourself? You know, what are the decisions you're making when you're by yourself? And most importantly, what are the small promises that you need to make and keep to yourself? Because if you have a situation or a life where you're constantly letting yourself down, you're not going to have self-esteem. And without self-esteem, you're not going to achieve your dreams.
So true. And so what we call that is living a life full of purpose, right? It's also service, right? And you have this calling to serve, right? Like you're serving yourself first, right? You have all this personal growth that you're working through. And then right away, once you grow through something, and this is the way I see it for me, and maybe you can validate it for me, Alan, is when I look at something I've grown through, I right away look back and wonder who could I help get through a similar situation, right? Wherever maybe they're stuck in the same place. And what I found is that at first I was like, okay, go out and save some souls. And now I feel like they almost have to come like to you somehow. So you have to just go live whatever version of your life that will get ridicule, right? When you're on your way up or growing, your people kind of hate that. And I noticed some people there, I had somebody reach out, what does it feel like, to be a millionaire? I said, I might be worth some money, but I'm not making millions. Right. And I'm like, but I told him, first thing I said was, I said, I feel like everyone's watching and judging. And it's like, I think the whole world is watching and judging you. And the first thing you need to steal back from your life is your opinion of you and not the opinion of others. Right. And I think getting, through those kind of transformations are going to give people this sense of fulfillment that they need, because you're fulfilling your goals, your tasks, your journal, like your habits. Work on that stuff first, regardless what anyone else says, right? For me and some of our friends, Lisa, you would agree, like when we don't drink, and I just cut drinking out recently, and then we went out with some friends right away, and then they're like, oh, you're not drinking, and then it's not like everyone just lets you off. It's like you need to drink to enjoy yourself around us, or they're watching and judging, and then they feel like, oh, you're holier than thou because you're not drinking somehow. And it's like, nah, I don't actually feel like that at all. But then this whole dynamic going on. And so why I'm saying this, though, is to the listeners, like, if you catch yourself in that space and you feel like you're making decisions based on other people's opinion, you're certainly going down the wrong path. And that's my opinion of that. And don't take my advice, but dig into that on your own and see where that goes.
I want to hear about your Next Level University here.
Thank you. So Next Level University, I started a company way back called Lazaros LLC after my car accident. And the tagline was, what you'll never learn in school, but desperately, in all caps, need to know. And so that's really what NLU, Next Level University, was built on, is what you'll never learn in school, but you desperately need to know. Like, where was the empathy and communication course? Where was the fitness course? Where was the I have my MBA, and I didn't take a finance class until graduate school. And yet we use money every single day. And so to me, it's just such a challenge to see some of these kids not being taught the fundamentals that matter most. Vulnerability, right, effective communication, speaking, oratory, fitness, family dynamics, internal family systems, psychology courses are taught, but not different modalities, CBT, all these different ones. So to me, I saw corporate, and I saw the fitness industry, and I saw the personal growth industry, and I noticed that they're very siloed. They're very siloed. Like fitness has the fitness industry. I was in the fitness industry for a time, competitor, all that stuff, fitness model, fitness coach. I saw that there was some personal development in fitness, and then you go to the personal development industry and there's not that much fitness. And it's like, whoa, this is the personal development industry. Like Jim Rohn, love you. If you heard of Jim Rohn, love you, big fan, but why aren't you in shape, brother? So to me, I just noticed that corporate had tons of professional development, but it had no personal development. And then personal development has tons of personal development, but not a lot of skill development, not a lot of professional development. So I found these amazing, holistic, wonderful, heart-driven, emotionally mature human beings that aren't winning in the economy. And then I have these mentors that are absolute ding-dongs that are multimillionaires, but they take better care of their Porsche than their wife. And I just can't have it. So for me, I just built a company that's like, listen, health, wealth, and love. I don't want to be healthy and not wealthy. I don't want to be wealthy and not healthy. And I definitely don't want to be healthy and wealthy, but not in love. And that is my honest truth. And so it's really difficult to be good at all three of those. It really is. It's actually alarmingly difficult, to be honest. But if you can do it, you will have such an unbelievably holistic, positive life, and I think positive legacy. And so Next Level University is built on that idea. There's always another level. No matter how hard your past has been, you have a spotless future and you can get to the next level. And every single person you look up to, conscious or not, at one point was at rock bottom, just like you. And so you can make new choices, and you have a responsibility, in my opinion, to make more positive choices, because back when I was making terrible choices, I unintentionally hurt those around me. And I've also been hurt by the people in my past that made terrible choices. And so, if you focus on fulfillment, you focus on being successful from the inside out, you focus on trying to be better, in here and out there, in that order, fulfilled people don't hurt people. So that's my focus. That's my mission. That's what NLU is all about. And I do coach people. I coach everyone from an 18-year-old named Calvin to a 63-year-old named Brenda.
Are these guys in the corporate space then, or what?
Some of them are. So yeah, some of them are. Some of them aren't. Some of them are brand new solopreneurs. Some of them are $500,000 businesses. Some of them are $2.5 million businesses. some of them are in corporate, some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them are intrapreneurs. At this stage, I've coached, hundreds of people from all different backgrounds, lots of different countries, definitely not all of them, but lots of different countries. And our team is also global too. So I coach the whole team as well. And
when you say
really
team, like, tell me about these people. Like, this
the
is
team.
like other coaches, or what do you mean?
No, so we have a 21 person team. We have our own podcast production agency. We produce 52 other shows, including one of my other ones. We also have a Next Level social media agency as well. And then we have we have 22 departments, and one of them's a charity, and everyone runs their own department. And it's kind of like each of those business units kind of roll up into one NLU, Next Level University. So Next Level University is a podcast and it's a brand, but it's really a business. It's a real company. But the cool part about it is it's entirely virtual. So I'll give you an example. My COO, her name's Christina. We've met in person once last year at a live event we had, but we are the closest ever. I mean, I work with her every week, right? She helps me run the company. And so it's just awesome. But Next Level University, we have group coaching. We have monthly meetups every month. We have, a book club every single week. We've got this Dreamliner journal. We've got online courses. We've got podcasts. We've got a whole bunch of stuff. If you are interested, nextleveluniverse.com. And it's everything, everything we do is there. We also have a charity that focuses on boys without fathers. So Kevin and I both grew up without fathers. So his dad left him when he was born, and my father passed away. And then my stepdad left at 14. So we actually opened it up to all single parents, but we host 2 events a year. One is Father's Day, and then the other one's during the holidays, and it's been just awesome. So
great
check
work,
that out.
man.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, that's cool. So this is a lot to put together. So you did this in about 9 years or so, right?
Yeah, but everything's an accumulation. So fortunately I accumulated a lot of skills prior to that.
Right.
Skills, well, maybe not as much inner work, but tons of external skills.
So I'm working with someone right now that's coaching me, and I'm developing a coaching program, and we were talking about what would be a target market, and she had mentioned to me that we should go into the corporate space and talk, because you're right, Alan, there's a big need for this in corporate. And I said, yeah, but I think I would go in there. And she goes, what do you think your message is going to be? And of course I had to just tell her what it was going to be, which is, you're all too good to be here working for this person. Like, that's the overarching message is, you're better than this, right? This isn't, unless you solely identify with the role that you're in, you need to get out. Like this either had to be your calling, which it was for my dad, by the way. Like, I asked my dad once, I always thought like he never really chased his dreams. I'm a dream chaser. I like to go big, and my shirt, 100% all in. Right. So,
nice.
But he tells me one day, I said, Dad, what was your big dream that clearly he hadn't kind of achieved it according to me? Right. He goes, oh, no. Yeah, I did exactly what I wanted to do. He goes, I wanted to be a factory worker when I was a boy. And I'm like, interesting. Well, he was a farmer. But then he's like, well, screw this farming. I want to work in a factory where, like, if it snows or it rains, I'm just in the factory. He thought that was the coolest thing. And he got paid really well, ended up becoming an engineer and working for building parts for Boeing and all this kind of thing. Right. But I thought my whole life that wasn't his thing. He wanted to be more than that. Right. But I never really had that conversation with. So unless that really is your thing, okay, don't lie to yourself. There's a good chance with a little bit of development, a little bit of coaching, you can get yourself on track to this transformation without getting in a car accident, right? And that's kind of why we have this podcast put together, is like, it's the toughest part is opening your eyes to that situation and start turning towards the dream life, right? Or ditching the 9 to 5 and finding some freedom, and then finding a reason to wake up in the morning, and, don't dread your alarm clock, and every day is a Saturday, and all these types of things you see on the internet, right? Like, that's all real for some people, right? So, and we just urge everyone to go that direction. I know you do, Alan. Do you teach that, or is that part of your curriculum, or is that part of your philosophy as well?
What I used to do is I used to ask, everything is reverse engineered. So I'm a computer engineer. I reverse engineer finish line. So if you tell me your goals, I remember one time I had this client who said, I want the most successful production company in all of Canada, film production company. And so I looked it up, British Columbia Pictures, and we started to go. And he's tracking 33 habits and he's grinding. And eventually he comes to me and he's like, dude, this is too much. I don't know if I can do this. I was like, well, you said you wanted to. And then I showed him British Columbia Pictures, 60 billion a year. And he's like, oh, no, I don't want that. And I went, oh. And this is how naive I was. Seriously. I don't just say things. Like when I say I want Tony Robbins level impact, I have reverse engineered what that's going to take. I don't say that and then like go to the beach.
Right.
And so my point is that I don't believe that entrepreneurship is necessarily for everyone at the same level. I do believe it's for everyone, but I don't believe that everyone should climb Mount Everest. I used to, and I've now come to understand that we're all wired very differently. And I do teach people how to get to whatever level they want to get to. But there are some people that if family is a core value and you want to get your kid off the bus every day, you're not going to be able to grind like I do. And I work 6 days a week, every week, and I work on Sunday too. And I told Emilia, and she's an entrepreneur as well, like, this is who I am. This is who I'm always going to be. I'll give the mornings and the evenings for family when we have children, but make no mistake about it. I'm going to work every day for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I realize now, having coached so many different people, that they don't really want that. I've tried to get people to heights. One of my clients said, I want Brene Brown level impact. And we reverse engineered it. We rocked and roll. And then eventually she's like, I don't want to do this. Like, this is brutal. And I said, but you said, Brene Brown grinded for like 15 years on the road, on the reg, all the research, all that stuff. You can't want the result without the process. And I used to realize that I used to think everyone was saying results they want, and they actually were like thinking what that would take. And it turns out a lot of them are just saying results that they want, but they have no idea what that's going to take. And so the last thing I would leave everyone with is, go ahead.
That falls into place, dude. Thank you for giving me this moment. I wanted to pause you there because that plays into that purpose, right? You have to have that why so big, like you're willing to die for it. I don't remember who said this, but he said, all you have to do to get your dream life is walk across this beam, right? And it's a 6-inch beam.
Yeah.
Have you heard that one? I can't remember who said it, but and he says, okay, walk across the beam and your dream's there. And he says, okay, and it's across 2 buildings and the wind's blowing and everything. And he says, okay, would you do that for your dream? And they're like, no way, that's too sketch. Not willing to do it.
Yep.
And he said, okay, so your kid's in the building across there, about ready to die, and it's on fire, right? Would you walk across that beam with the wind? And you would just go. Right. And so I thought that was a critical moment to jump in there, Alan, and say, like, if you think that you don't want that, you're not dreaming big enough. Your dreams are not so big they're worth dying for. And I do that in like some of my teachings we talk about that, Alan. So I think it's important that was a great, a humbling moment for you and for me to realize we're not all in that place, but we haven't even had the time to do so because we're probably stuck in survival mode. So I'm probably
the last thing that I would add real quick is people don't. I never realized this, but a lot of people who have high self-belief actually don't know that other people don't. Like, if you've ever heard the Will Smith, why would you ever be realistic? Will Smith has no idea that he has level 10 self-belief. He's just never not had self-belief. The dude just has a lot of self-belief. It's called self-efficacy in psychology. But I didn't know that other people didn't have self-belief. I've always just dreamed really big, and I've always thought really long-term. And for some people, I think that it's more of a slow build, like set a level 2 goal, hit it, and then set a level 3 goal, hit it, and then set a level 4 goal, hit it, and then set a level 5 goal,
now you believe you can do it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And every time your belief builds, your dreams will too.
Yeah. Anyone else see this conversation circling back to what we talked about earlier?
But if you try to climb Mount Everest and it crushes your self-esteem and self-belief because you aimed too high too quick, now you will get stuck and you'll develop an ego to compensate. And so that's the last thing I'll share about coaching is my goal is not to get you to climb as high as I'm climbing. It's not even to get you to aim as high as I'm aiming. It's to get you to aim the right amount and then hit it, build self-esteem and self-worth and self-belief, and then aim higher. And then aim higher. It's a staircase that I hope that you can build.
I guess that kind of plays
you,
on the name of the company a little bit there. You just described. Next
Next
level.
level, right? Get to the next level.
That's the goal. Get to the next level, not to my level, not to your dad's level, not to your mom's level, not to Will Smith's level, but to your next level, your own unique next level. Yeah. So
that's beautiful.
Love it.
Alan, it's been awesome, dude. You got some real insight. I love that you brought the stories today. You brought how you developed, and then also how you bring all of that self-development to the real world from the inside of your universe into the world we all live in and shared with us today. So for our listeners, hope it was a power-packed 40 minutes here. And yeah, we'll catch you guys next Friday. Thanks, Alan. And I think I'm going to put that John Lennon post link in the description too. So I think it's a really cool article. So if you guys read it, it's super powerful. It aligns with everything we talked about today. So if you want to go one step deeper or next level into this space, I suggest you go down and click that link. All right, well, cool. Over and out for this week, guys. We'll see you next Friday.